Well, hello everyone, and welcome to TLP Live here on Sunday night. Hey, Paul, how we doing?
Hey, Dan, happy 4th weekend to you, my friend.
Hey, did you have a good 4th of July?
I actually did. We went to a little party and we saw some fireworks and it was absolutely fantastic. Small little, just a couple of people, social distancing, and great conversation, and we got a chance to see some fireworks, which was great. How about yourself? Did you do something fun?
We planned on going somewhere, and then it was like, there's going to be so many people, and it's going to be hard to social distance. So we stayed home all weekend, and I worked on my yard and my gardens all weekend. So
You got some gardens.
I've got gardens all around my house, and I finally pulled weeds and mulched, and oh my gosh, 10 yards of mulch spread around the house this week. So.
Well, good for you getting some stuff done, getting a little exercise. Good on you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my shoulders are sore. Well, as you all know, we had to make I don't want to say sad, but I guess it is a sad announcement this week where just with the way Phase 4 guidelines were for us, we had to cancel the rest of 2020. And I know, Paul, you talked with quite a few of our actors right after that.
Yeah, it was definitely, the good thing about it, of course, it's bittersweet, isn't it? Because we're not going to be able to gather this year. But I think that as we spoke last Sunday, that we both feel that this is the right decision to make because of where we're at with everything in Illinois and our governor and the laws and the guidelines, and making sure that we prioritize our artists and patrons' safety. So when we did announce it to our company, of course, they were saddened, but they completely understood. They understood why. And they all were very eager to say, please, let's come back next summer and let's do this. We're so excited to come to TLP.
Yeah.
And so, we have a really great group that I really hope that we can introduce to our TLP audiences, because they are all fantastic and they were just wonderful with this news.
Well, some of our audience got to see them in the virtual read-through of What a Wonderful World, and that was nice to be able to do. At least we got a little look at some of all of them. And this week, Paul, we need to start taking a look at what we're going to do next season, because typically we would announce our season on during the gala, which is now scheduled for August. We'll see how we're going to do that. We're going to meet this week and come up with a date for sure, and decide how we're going to do this virtual gala.
Yeah. So time to have it. If anyone's watching, if anyone has any thoughts or suggestions, of course, we know that we're going to be doing the world premiere. What a Wonderful World will be in the 21 season for sure. But yeah, Dan, that's a really big question, because it's our birthday. We got a big 60.
The whole idea was we were going to do shows, repeat from the other seasons. So we're going to talk this week, Paul and I, and the rest of our admin staff here, and then maybe come up with a suggestion for the reading committee, and hopefully put this out in a survey to get some feedback from our patrons to see what they want to see us do in 2021, our 60th year. Can you believe this place has been running for 60 years?
Well, with TLP Live, we've been hearing from so many people that have been a part of Timberlake Playhouse legacy from all the way back from the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. And it just is wonderful. And, to hear so many people talk about their experience here, Dan, I feel like if nothing else has stayed the same, it's that experience and that impact that TLP has on our artists when they come.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so we'll be looking at what happens next year. But of course, now there it is, the blank stage, the empty stage with the ghost light. And we want to thank Mary Rose. She emailed me a couple 3 weeks back and said, "Do you guys have a ghost light?" Well, you know what our ghost light was. It was like a deer antler lamp. It was and that we carried up.
It was a lamp like a shape of a tree.
Yeah.
And we called it the TLP, ghost light lamp.
Yeah.
And yes, it was very nice to see an actual ghost light in our theater.
Well, I was at Menards, of course, where I go weekly now, and I thought, let's buy the stuff. We'll build one. So that's all built. That's nothing we went out and purchased. Just bought some parts and built it, put it together. So now we have a ghost light, and unfortunately, right now it represents TLP being closed for a while. But we'll continue doing virtual, and we're working on some virtual things. We already mentioned the virtual gala. Paul talked a little bit about the other virtual.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to be putting together our TLP virtual concert of the TLP stars, and what's going to happen there is going to be a virtual concert that we're going to be able to bring back alumni from all the way back from from the 80s, 90s. We're going to be able to reach out to our Broadway friends and ask them to participate, and we are putting together this night, and it is basically the opportunity for our audiences to be able to have an opportunity to see us perform, even though it's not live. It will be virtually live, and to opportunity to be able to put a donation in if they feel comfortable with that. Because again, as we know, Dan, we are not gathering, and when we don't gather, then that puts us at a financial hardship. And so we're going to have to try to work through this together. It's going to take everyone out there to help us get to 21 for sure.
Yeah, utilities, taxes, all of those things continue to happen, and so even though we're not performing live in 2020, we're performing virtually. We should design our season shirt based on our virtual COVID performances.
Well, that's funny, because we actually Felicia and I have been talking about that. What kind of fun little shirt it can be a part, and we come up with one. I'll lay it on you. Let me know what you think.
All right.
It says on the side of the T-shirt, it'll say "Life is short," and then on the back it'll say "Until COVID."
That sounds kind of morbid, but,
a day seems like a week during this time. A week seems like a month.
Yeah. So those of you that have your the box office is staying open for the next 2 weeks. So if you already have your tickets, of course, our subscribers, you can exchange into the next season. That's a great way to have next year's subscription already taken care of. We can concert show tickets. You can convert those into gift certificates. You can convert them. We're working right now on rescheduling all the concerts into next season, and so far we've been able to get 4 of them scheduled already. Oh Boys are scheduled for the 23rd. The Beach Boys are scheduled for whatever the Saturday night before that is.
You know what you're gonna do? You're gonna put the dates out there, and then was like, well, now what Dan said it was gonna be on
yeah,
that.
Exactly. Now 23rd is right, and I think it's the 5th, the 16th is the I don't have my calendar.
We'll put them
Anyway,
up on the website, so they'll be able to see.
we'll have them on the website as soon as I get the rest of them scheduled. We're working on those, so you can just convert tickets right into your concert tickets right into next year's. And of course, if you need to do so, you can ask for a refund. We've changed our refund policy this year. We're hoping that people will take the refund as a gift certificate, because as we mentioned a bit ago, we don't have a lot of cash coming in right now. So it's kind of difficult to.
And that gift certificate is going to be great, because we are going to be extending our merch arm, and we're going to be able to, people are going to be able to put that towards anything that they're going to want to in Timberlake, whether it be a show or a snack or a piece of merchandise like a T-shirt, like what we wear as well. So we do hope that you all consider that, because although we all understand that everybody's going through it right now, our industry has taken a big blow. And anything that you guys can do to help us out, we would be so appreciative. So thank you so much in advance for that.
Absolutely. So I want to mention just a little bit, we talked virtual, but I want to mention a little bit about our virtual education program. Right now we're doing, in fact, we're almost booked up with lessons, at least through the end of this month. So if you want to take guitar lessons or piano lessons, voice lessons, drum lessons, get online and register for lessons. And our workshops are going great guns. We've got a special going right now. Take a look at the special. There it is, special price of $150 for Zoom Stage, Junior Puppetry, Improv for Young Actors, and Zoomin' and Groovin'. So that's a 4-pack, and they start this week. So if you're interested in that, just call into our box office and get signed up for it. And then lots of other workshops. And with phase 4, we're actually able to do some on-site workshops. So please look at our website, because we have some on-site workshops that start in August. They're limited to only 15 people per workshop, and we're going to hold them right out back here on the deck, so they'll be outdoors. And we're especially excited for that pop star party and our kids detective. We've done that for a couple of years now, and last year it really went great guns. So hopefully, if you feel comfortable getting here, we're going to do kind of a combination of on-site and virtual with those.
And you know, the weather here has been absolutely fantastic too, Dan. So I think that if and I've been talking to a couple of the parents in our community, and they are really overjoyed that we're going to be able to start doing some programming here at the theater on the outdoor stage.
Yeah. So take a look there at our TLP education staff. And Robert put together a little video I'm going to try to share here. And if I can remember how we share our screen.
Oh, technology.
I don't remember. Why isn't this working? You know what?
Technical difficulty?
We're going to have to fill out one of those forms, because there was a 10-second break in our broadcasting. We didn't talk for 10 seconds, you know, so that
you can't do that. I mean, especially between you and I, that's almost impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I will.
Kind of an exciting show tonight. I'm really excited to hear what our guests have to say. And Paul, if we could start, let's talk just a little bit about this new program that you and I talked about, 3 years ago when you first interviewed. We wanted to start a new works program. Now, our world premiere this summer is a new work, but it's not part of our new works program. Our new works program is where we bring writers and artists to the campus to write and work on new shows.
That's correct. That's correct. Dan, I think how this all started is that, you know, a lot of people, when they see the final result, you know, let's take one of the most popular shows in the world right now, Hamilton. Hamilton just didn't come to Broadway, right? Somebody had to allow Lin-Manuel and his team to write and try things out and develop it and put it through different paces and what's working, what's not working. And really that all happens in the regional theater of our country. So all of the, you know, regional theaters, if they have a new works program, those are the opportunities where writers go and they start to develop their work. So what we were going to do, and what we were very excited about inaugurating ours this year, was our new works program is the opportunity. We extend an invitation for a writing team to come here, spend a week on our campus. We put them up, we house them, and we feed them, and we give them nothing but resources so that they can do what they do, and that's right. They can walk the nature trails, they can go out on the lake, they can work with they can work with some actors, they can work with our musicians, and it just allows them to live in that artist's world for 1 week so that they can continue to work and create what they're working on. Then at the end of that week, we bring in an invited audience to see what they have been working on. And then there's a moderated talkback session where the writers get some feedback on whether or not it's working. Is there a character that's working? Is there a song that's working? and basically anything and everything that they want to learn. So we were very, very excited to inaugurate this program this year, but I am very pleased to say that we will be doing it next year, and we are going to extend the invitation to the writing team that we were going to have this summer. And it just so happens that these are our guests today on our show, because again, shows need all the love they can get. They need all the support. When you're building a brand new musical, it's probably one of the hardest art forms to create from a beginning, middle, and end. And so I was very much looking forward to this this year. But you know what, Dan? Maybe it's serendipitous that we're going to inaugurate it on our 60th birthday. Maybe it's just
that's a real good point.
Yeah.
Well, let's bring out our writer and lyricist.
Absolutely. So
Alexandra Conroy. Hello.
Hey guys. Thanks for having me.
Our composer lyricist, Lola Pritchard. Hello.
Hello.
Good.
How are you guys? Thank you so much for joining us tonight. How are you guys doing? Everybody good over where you are at?
Yeah. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Happy
fireworks going on in my neighborhood at the moment, so it's fun. It's festive.
So why don't you tell our audiences where you both are right now? So Alex, why don't we start with you? Where are you at right now?
I'm currently right outside Austin, Texas.
Ooh,
nice. I mean, beautiful Austin.
Yeah.
About what's going on in Texas right now. And Lola, where are you at?
I'm in Tennessee. I'm in West Tennessee. I'm in my hometown of Jackson, Tennessee, which is like about an hour outside of Memphis. Right. And we're like a great little small city. So
wonderful. Well, thank you.
That's a Johnny Cash song, right?
Totally, 100%. People think all the time that it's Jackson, Mississippi, but it's Jackson, Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
He spent a lot of time here. He was very close with Carl Perkins, and so Jackson's like the home of Carl Perkins and where rockabilly started, all that fun stuff. So
that's great. Good piece of trivia knowledge. I love that. Thank you for that clarification, because I, for one, thought it was Jackson, Mississippi. So that's cool. Great. Well, let's before we get into the show that we're going to be talking about, let's talk a little bit about each of you and your background. So, Alex, talk to us about how did your journey lead you to be wanting to write musicals?
Oh, so many things. My background is musical theater as a performer, but I've always been interested in making up stories. I just learned this, but apparently I would tell my mother bedtime stories when I was 2. So not her telling me bedtime stories, I would tell her bedtime stories for me to go to sleep.
mm-hmm.
And that progressed. I started writing more seriously at 14 with film. And for this particular show, I've always been really interested in history, especially World War II. And but I could never be too far from the theater, and musicals are just my love. They really are.
That's great. That's really great. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that's good. So now let's jump in with Lolo. Lolo, why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey and kind of how you came to theater and then into composition?
Theater has been a thing that theater's probably been the biggest constant in my life as far as things I've been working on. I started performing professionally in live theater when I was 9 years old. I got my equity card when I was a really little girl. I would do professional theater in Nashville. I grew up about 2 hours. I grew up in Jackson. It's about 2 hours from Nashville, and I would do theater there. And so my love of theater started at a very young age. And when I was that young, I was writing a lot of music. I was writing a lot of songs, but I don't think, obviously, when I was that young, it occurred to me that, oh yeah, I can totally write a musical one day. But the desire, I think, was always buried in there. And then when I was a senior in high school, I got cast in a show called Spring Awakening, which turned into a big fancy Broadway show. When I was cast in it, I got cast to do a workshop which then led to an off-Broadway production. And then the whole thing just kind of snowballed into this great big fancy show. And so I was thrust into the world of New York City Broadway theater. I was a senior in high school, and it was a pretty crazy journey, and it taught me a lot at a very young age. But it also taught me so much about what happens in the creative aspect of making a musical. So I got to work, because I was in the original cast, I got to work firsthand with the creative team. Ira Pittleman and Tom Hulse were our two main producers. Michael Mayer was our director. Duncan Sheik and Steven Sater were our writers. I got to watch the creative process and how it really unfolded, especially because I was a part of the early workshops. And so it was a very eye-opening experience, and it made me realize, like, oh, I want to write musicals. Sure, I still would love to perform in them, but I want to create them too. And so I guess in 2013 is when I began my official composer journey. And at this point, I have 5 different musicals that I'm working on, all in various stages of production and development. But it's been an interesting journey in musical theater because I didn't go to school. I didn't go to college for this. And it's just something that I have been doing and working in since I was 9. I'm 32 years old now. So it's been a long, long time spent in the world of musical theater. But I also spend a lot of time writing pop music now for my own albums, other people's music as well. And so it's been an interesting journey, taking all different aspects of the songwriting that I do and seeing how it can all be incorporated into theater, because at the end of the day, it's storytelling, like what Alexandra's saying. I've always been interested in storytelling, and I've always been interested in the many different ways you can tell a story. And for example, this story, our Finding Helena story, there's so much history to it. And similar to a story like Hamilton, right? There's so much history to that story, but there's so many different ways you can go about telling a story. And I find that to be the most fascinating thing about telling a story, that you can tell it from so many different perspectives, from so many different point of views, and really, really get your point across, and not just have it be one dimensional. You can have it be so many different things. And so, yeah, I find so much joy in it, and it's been an interesting journey. I don't know that I thought when in 2013, when I started doing this composer life, it was so different than just my regular writing songs life. And it was something that I legitimately, at that time, I thought, I don't feel like I'm old enough to be a composer. That felt like a very grown up, it felt like a very grown up thing. It felt like something that I had to grow into, or something that I just wasn't going to be qualified to do until after I was the age of 40. I don't know why I had convinced myself of that, but that was a real thing I had convinced myself of. So being welcomed into the world of being a composer, not just as a young adult, but also as a female, has been a wonderful thing, because I know there's been a lot of struggle there for females along the way. So I'm appreciative of the fact that I've been able to work with people who want to have women in the room and want to have women telling stories, not just about other women, but, through a different perspective. And so, yeah, that's my story.
Well, that's great. And I think that I wanted to also let our audience know I did have a chance to see you in Spring Awakening, which would go on to win the Tony Award for Best Musical. And I think it was 2007. Am I right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
And then I also had a chance to see your one of your other musicals that you composed and wrote lyrics for, Songbird, which was another wonderful, wonderful piece of work. So I happen to know a little bit about the background, and so I just wanted to let our audiences know that she is a very, very talented artist, and so we're very excited to have you with Finding Helena. So let's we have one more guest, but before we bring out Ian, I want to ask real quickly, and this is for both of you. What is it about Finding Helena? What is the story about Finding Helena? Why is it important? Why is it important for us as an audience to hear this story?
Oh, so many things. Well, I think Helena is a very multifaceted, important role model, especially since so many women in 1940 were not as take charge, yet she's still loving and compassionate, but she's not, she learns not to be a doormat, and in such a dangerous situation. Plus the clash of cultures, which is still unfortunately very an important message for the kids of today, and to show the kids that, hey, this wasn't so long ago. It's still less than 100 years. And some of these people are still alive. And I think it's important to tell that story, especially now, before it's too far away, but it'll still last beyond that.
And I should probably take a step back. Why don't we first start with what is the story of Finding Helena, so that people can kind of follow along. I got my questions out of order. So why don't you tell us, Alex, this was, backstory is I found this story through Alex many years ago now, and we've gotten to this point with the story. Alex, why don't you share what is the story of Finding Helena?
Finding Helena is about a young woman named Helena. She is German, from Berlin. Her father is a mid-high ranking Nazi officer who is restationed in Warsaw, Poland, right after it was decimated by the bombs of the Nazis. And she is practically engaged to another officer, and she falls head over heels for this Polish Jew who is masquerading as not Jewish. And they realize that they have found their home in each other and try to run away out of Warsaw. So that's the story.
That's great. That's great. I want to ask about, how did we get involved with, as far as, hang on, I'm losing my place and walking around. There we are. Talk to me a little bit about how we found Lolo. And Lolo, how did you come into this story as a composer lyricist, co-lyricist?
I found this story through you, Paul, actually, and I was sent the materials that existed. Obviously, we've done some work on it since, but upon reading the story, I found this incredible story that Alexandra had written, which was about this woman, Helena, this young woman who is in this very war-torn time, the Second World War, as we all know how difficult of a time that was to be alive, whether you lived in Germany or not. But we see this young woman going through all the stages of being a young woman in and amongst a controlling environment, because her father is a part of Nazi Germany and of the military, of the German military, and he's a very high-ranking person within the military, and she falls in love with a Jewish man, and she begins this journey of figuring out how they can even find a place in the world for their love and for their life together. And I was so taken with the story because it obviously is so real. This is a story that we know happened to people. This is a story that many people lived. And like Alexandra was saying, it's not that long ago that this happened. And there's this interesting thing when you are retelling history. The value of it, I think, is priceless, because I think there's always something to be learned from what has happened before. And it's interesting how we hear this phrase, history repeats itself. We hear this kind of a thing, but it's not until we actually take a deep dive into history and we re-examine what has happened and look at it from different perspectives and different voices and points of view that we really understand how certain things have not changed and certain things have not necessarily evolved. And yes, maybe things have gotten better here or there, little pieces, but that we still have a long way to go. And I think that one of the things that I found incredibly moving about this story is the fact that you have this German girl and this Jewish man who are totally super madly in love, and the world is basically against them. And I think that unfortunately, sadly, we live in a time still where that's very much a reality for so many people and in so many different ways. And maybe not necessarily because they're living in a war-torn environment, but there are so many different ways in which people still have to deal with that all the time, even in our own country and right now. And so I think that just that one aspect of the story, and there's many aspects of this story that I think are very important to be retelling and revisiting from also the historical perspective, because there's one thing when you're telling a fantastical story, right, where it's completely made up, and then there's this whole other thing that happens when you're telling a real life story that you're hearing and you're like, there's no way that that's true. There's no way that can be true. There's this other thing that happens I think to all of us when we listen to stories like that. Again, like you were talking about, Hamilton is a great example of people sort of revisiting history and going, wow, I totally forgot and didn't think of it from that perspective. Or, if you revisit it in such a different way. And so being able to create the music for this, it's an interesting balance, because we have obviously the historical aspect of it where we want to incorporate the elements of what the sounds were of that time. So we're sort of talking about a time of 1938 to beyond 1945. And so there's a specific soundscape that we're trying to capture because we want to stay historically relevant. And then there's also this awesome rock music element, which weaves in and out of everything that's going on. So it's been a really fun piece to work on because it's completely different than anything I've ever done. And there's an element to the writing that is challenging because there are moments where we have to visit the German military and the Nazis in these moments where they're really celebrating these victories, and the lyrical content and the emotional content of what we're seeing them celebrate as they are absolutely destroying an entire race of people, and as they are sort of just beyond that destroying everything else around them physically. It's a very difficult thing to write about and find the balance of what's too aggressive and what's too soft. And it's been a really interesting thing to work on musically because it takes a different kind of sensitivity than anything else I've ever worked on, because we are talking about something that as Alex was saying, people are still alive that lived through the war. My grandmother, quite honestly, lived through the war. She was born in 1943 and came over in 1949, and her name is on Ellis Island. She was born in northern Germany. We have a lot of people like that who have many, many memories of what we're talking about. So there's also this desire to try to be accurate and also take our creative freedoms too while we're doing that. So
Well,
that's what I really want.
What genre of music? What genre of music are you creating for this story?
Well, so most of it lives in alternative rock or rock and roll. So that's the larger majority of the music in this piece. But there are moments where we have some things that live in a more singer-songwriter alternative lane. We have a few softer moments, if you will, more intimate moments that require a little less electric guitar, if you will.
Yeah.
But it still has it still has those undertones, even in
I think that's one of the things that about this piece that really kind of excited me to want to be involved, was because here we have this story that takes place in the late 30s, 40s of Warsaw, Poland, with the German invasion and the occupation there, and then juxtapose that against a current rock and roll and a very kind of contemporary musical feeling in that context of rock or alternative rock, and that emotion that it invokes in that music. And to put those together, you'd never think they would work, but yet here they are, and they did start working. And I think that this is a good segue into bringing in our next guest with this, because for our audiences, I had been sent this story by Alex. I really was interested and moved by it, and kind of her original concepts of it. And I had shared it with a good friend of mine who we were looking for something to work on it together. And then he actually came on, and we found Lolo and brought her in. And now he's also been a very big part of this group that have been developing this musical. So we have him today. Dan, let's go ahead and bring on Ian Bentley. Hey, Ian. Nope, I don't think we can hear you.
There we are. It's that mute button.
There we go. Thank you for being on the show today. Why don't we, we got a chance to hear a little bit about who Alex and Lolo are. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what your journey was coming to theater and to finding Helena?
Yeah, well, it's real simple. Obviously, Paul, you and I go back, hate to say it, but well over 25 years.
Okay.
Paul and I actually know each other from the theater department at University of Florida. So he and I have been good friends since then. But the biggest bond that we've had was music. Even more than theater, was just straight music. Paul's a drummer. We would jam together. So there was all of these, different ways that we would bond. And throughout the years, we've always talked about trying to get something going. Well, fast forward to a lot of different projects that we've tried. I believe it was January of 2018. Paul gave me a call. He goes, "Hey, you got to read this script." He's like, "Lightning in a bottle." And I'm like, "Paul, I've heard that before." And so what I did is I'm like, okay, I'll give it a shot. And most of the stuff that he sends me, I get through act 1 and that's it. This is the first one that I couldn't stop. Like, I had to keep on going into act 2 and read the whole thing. And that's what was so intriguing about it, because not only was it the story, not only was it the subject matter, the juxtaposition of having modern rock with a period piece, and then at the same time being able to kind of pull it all together. And, I'm a grandson of a Holocaust survivor. So this specific piece was so interesting to me because it took the humanity from a different point of view, which was the enemy, essentially, the people that wiped you out, or wiped out so many different people that were Jewish, but took the humanity and kind of made you think a little bit and said, not everybody was like that. Not everybody had that evilness to them. And some people were just put in a position that they just needed to get out. And that's what this story is. And it just so happens how the story evolves with her meeting this random person in, war-torn Poland. It was just so interesting. So, Paul, you and I, we worked on this for a little bit, and we knew that we needed to find the right connection as far as to match up with Alexandra as far as the music was concerned. We went through a few different people and, tried out different people. And, you sent me some people, I worked with some people. It just wasn't meshing. And then, suddenly you sent me Lolo, and I listened to her on Spotify. I'm like, the soul that this woman has inside of her, and I was just blown away with it. So between Alexandra's writing and the story that she wrote, and to me, it's a story that's not been told yet. And then when we found Lolo, to be able to really be like, this is the woman that is going to really be able to sink her soul into this and rip it out and we were right. We were right. And I'm just so happy that we're able to kind of move this piece to where it's at now in a development stage. Obviously, we wish we were there. And, I believe it was maybe a couple of weeks ago that we were supposed to be there to do the workshop. But, it's interesting. Sometimes there's blessings in disguises. And the more we delve into it, and the more that we dig into it, and the more we really, tear apart these different characters and, the storyline, every single time we have a conversation, it feels like it's getting more real. And so, we're looking at this as we'd be excited to come back to Timberlake next summer to workshop it over there. But I feel like we'll be in a better spot than we were a year ago. And, just taking and this is for almost everybody that might be listening out there, is take this opportunity to step back and it's kind of the gift of time in two different ways. You have a gift of time where there's nothing going on, but yet you have this whole extra year to be able to make something incredible. So anyways, that's my story, and I'm sticking with it.
All right. And I think that this is also, Ian, your role is also, you're a creative producer, but you also have that music background. And on this particular project, we found something that really linked in. You obviously have a very strong connection to this story because of your ancestry and how that kind of that lineage goes back. But what's more important, just your taste and your sensibility in music. You've been a music producer. You've produced. I know that we've worked together with you as a music producer. You're a musician and you're a songwriter yourself. And now you're taking on a new role, and it's orchestrator. And just for our audiences, tell us a little bit about what the orchestrator is and what that functionality is.
To me, for this specific project, it's all about the soundscape. It's almost like applying a film score to a musical. That's how I'm approaching this, and digging into a lot of different types of influences. So, like Lo just said, and by the way, it's easy for me to do this. I don't have to write. I have these amazing pieces, right? That she gives it to you, and she's like, here you go. Where all I hear is the music that supports it, right? At that specific time, in that specific scene, for those specific characters. So to me, it's not the brunt of the songwriting experience or having to do the lyrics, which, Lo and Alex are combining to, create these amazing lyrics. I mean, I get them and I'm listening to them, and, they're some of them are just guitar or piano and vocals, and I'm just blown away with it. And I emotionally go into a spot where I'm like, now all of a sudden I hear the drums, I hear the beat that there should be there. I understand the building up of how this should kind of, start, might be slow, and then just it's so powerful at the end that you're just, it's emotion. So, pulling from different spots of my career of, anything from rock to, old wave to, things like Nine Inch Nails, where I'm kind of, tapping into a little bit of that, of the Trent Reznor for this, only because it has such an edge to it at specific moments that it fits. And what's cool about it is, we can do whatever we want, right? That's the beauty of this art. And just to be able to, figure out how to create the soundscape that makes it just so interesting with a period piece is, it just speaks to me. It just honestly just speaks to me. So I'm excited about it.
It's interesting because a couple of weeks ago, as as some of our audiences know, we were going to also do a world premiere that we were going to produce on our main stage. What a Wonderful World. What a Wonderful World is a jukebox musical. So that music was already recreated, and then that writer, Jeremy Desmond, and the musical supervisor, Jesse Vargas, took the pre-existing songs and molded and shaped them into the moment of what Jeremy was writing. Here, this is a different process. And so this is a question for all three of you, from Ian and Alex and Lolo. Here we're creating a brand new piece. The music does not exist. The soundscape does not exist. talk to our audiences a little bit about the process of how that happens. Alex, obviously it starts with you and the script and the story, and then it gets shared with Lo and Ian and myself, and we kind of bounce back. But let's talk individually a little bit. So Alex, let's start with you. How does that story translate to giving it to Lolo to say, here you go, Lolo, create some music for this?
Like the show itself or the lyrics, like if I send her some stuff?
Both.
Oh, okay. Well, when Paul found me, the script was a whole piece. Like it was done in an aspect. So Paul sent her that. She loved it, and when we came together, I already had like bits and pieces of lyrics. Sometimes a song and a half worth of this of the same thing. So I would put it in a Google Doc and I would be like, here you go. It's stuff, I'll do that talk to text on my phone. Like when I'm driving, I get the best inspiration when I'm driving at night, like on the highway, listening to music. I'm like, oh wait, I need to write this down. Or if I'm just laying in bed, I'm like, oh man, I'm almost asleep, but I can't lose this. Okay, open notes and just.
And I remember when you would read the script, you would have great examples of kind of the sound you were looking for. So you might list a couple of shows. Like I know that Spring Awakening happened to be a big influence on you in this show. Also, some of your favorite bands. And so when we would read the script, to say the song kind of wants to sound like this. And so then when you pass that over to Lolo, she kind of had a jumping off point. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually saw this is Tamale. I saw Spring Awakening twice when it was on Broadway. Both times it was Lolo's understudy. But I was at the Tonys the same year as Spring Awakening won. So we were in the same room then in 2007, way back when. So yes, what were we talking about? Spring Awakening, music. Okay. So yeah, I would just have my music on shuffle, and I'm like, I need angst for this song. Not this kind of angst. Sounds too happy. And I would just like, sit and listen, drive and listen. And I would write it down if I'm like, oh, this is great. I think I even, one of the songs, I even had the Oogie Boogie song from Nightmare Before Christmas.
Classic.
Which that's a great freaking song if I ever heard one.
So then you get this information from and your inspiration from your music, and then now we give it to Lolo. So Lolo, here you go. You get this text with some information on the kind of song that Alex is thinking about in her mind on how it should sound. Now what's your process when you receive this information? What happens then?
My job as a composer and as the music side of things is to create a soundscape. And that's a different process for every piece that I work on and every project that I work on. With something like Finding Helena and working with Alexandra, there was a lot of this story that had existed in her mind already for a long time. And so when you step into a project like that, it's not that your opinions don't matter or those kinds of things, but you want to be aware of what has already existed and what you're contributing. And I feel like, partially just because this is how I am as a collaborator in general, but I feel like it's so important that when you're dealing with a show that has already been sort of fully realized to a certain degree, that it's really important to take what's there, keep what is super valuable, obviously, and then not necessarily pick and choose and say, oh, this isn't as good. But sometimes after something has existed for a little while, it's just like you can tell it in a more thorough way. And so there's a re-examining that happens, and that has happened with this music, of how can we tell this story so that we're streamlining a lot of what is being said in the music, so that we're not reiterating too much within the music what we're already hearing in the text. That's something I'm very aware of as a composer, not just in this storytelling, but in any storytelling that I'm doing, so that you're telling the most efficient story possible, but you still have the emotional value of what you're trying to say, and you're still painting a really vivid picture. And it's really fun to work with Alex on this, because she has such clear ideas for what she wants. And so there are times where I need to create an entire song from scratch, and then there are times where I'm taking what she has already created, which might be really almost a lot of it is almost kind of like poems, really, that have been birthed out of her inspiration for these characters and what she wants them to say. Because the music is always going to be this emotional thing. It comes from an emotional, soulful place. And music itself, I should say, comes from an emotional and soulful place within each of us. And so when you're telling stories through music, they're always going to have a little bit more of that emotional weight to them. And you can use that to the storytelling advantage. And so if you want to soundscape wise help paint the picture further of a violent moment or an intimate moment, the music is there to help guide us in our emotional feeling, but also in what we're hearing, to help us really be able to get there in our minds and in our imaginations and in our emotions as well. So being able to take these things that Alex has created and just kind of fully realize them a little bit more, put them to music. And it's all trial and error, right? Because sometimes you do something and you're like, hey, it's all a shot in the dark. You don't know what's going to work until you do. And you have to be a little fearless about it and be willing to, I don't want to say make mistakes, because that's a bad way of looking at it. I don't know when you're creating like that there are technically mistakes per se. But you've got to be willing to write some stuff that maybe isn't that great and say that's how to get from point A to point B. And so that's also a part of the thing, is when you're starting a new working process, especially like this, where Alex had been working on this for a while on her own, and then you bring in these extra elements, it's also getting into that rhythm of writing and creating, and it's different for every person. It's different for every writing partnership, that kind of thing. But it's interesting too when you're doing the trial and error thing, because sometimes you'll do one thing and it's the first thing and it's so great, and straight out of the gate you're like, that's totally it, awesome, great, and you move on to the next thing. And then the next thing you work on, it'll be 10 tries before you get it right. It's like there's no way of really being able to gauge how quickly you work on some of these things either, because it's absolutely about trying to remain as connected to each moment as you can. And right. So the more that you go through the process of editing a song or writing a song and going, you know what, that's just not right, and scrapping it, the times where you write something and you're like, I think this needs to be a little more upbeat, or I think this needs to be a little more aggressive, or I think this is too harsh, or whatever it is. And sometimes you can take what you've already created, strip it down to bare bones, and build it back up. And then sometimes you just have to start completely all over again.
And I think that's the hardest thing. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize, is that, they think that perhaps when they hear that score, that final song, they're like, they right. just assume that was the first song that came out of the writer's head when they got to that point in the script, and like, oh, well, this is the song and that's the song. But it's not, is it? It's yeah. I've heard you say many a time where, you might have to write 10 different songs for one moment before you land on what is the right song. And that's got to be a very, talk about trial and error, because again, as an artist, you have to ask yourself, okay, this is right, or this doesn't feel right. And that's really going back to the collaboration process, isn't it? Because, you know, when you'll craft a song and you'll share it with Alex and I and myself, and then all of a sudden now we're inside of that, and is our emotions going on the journey? Are we feeling like we're following the story? And, you know, for you, just from somebody who has collaborated with a lot of different writers before, you know, you and Alex have been just absolutely wonderful, because again, there is that it's hard, isn't it? You create something out of you, and it's hard to hear somebody say, well, it was okay, but I think we need to. And you guys have been absolutely dreams to be able to just hear that information and go, okay, I can receive that. And I think that that's one of the best things, because that's how musicals get done. And, you know, as from somebody who was in the room with Duncan and Steven when you guys were creating Awakening, you know, that just didn't, you know, happen. It was a process. It was a trial and error, wasn't it? You know?
Totally. I mean, you know, I was in the room watching the show be finished, quite honestly. Like, those of us that were in the workshop, there was, I mean, when I auditioned for the show, there was like about half of a show that existed, and everything was being created around us. And, you know, what you have to realize, or at least what you have to sort of approach the creative room with, energy wise, is that everyone is moving towards the same goal. Hopefully, ideally, which is to complete the piece, first of all, just whatever it is, to get to a point of real completion where you collectively as a creative team can look around the room and be like, yes, this is to a place where we feel totally comfortable putting it on a stage and letting people see it, and feeling like this is to a place where people will be able to understand what on earth is going on and what we're trying to say and what we're trying to do. And so that's like the first part of the energy. But the second part is that you're hopefully walking into a room with people that are going to be open-minded to the idea of criticism. And ultimately, it's all constructive. Hopefully, you're working in positive environments and you're not being degraded and you're not being torn down and you're not being shut out. And if you are, I would say either that's an entirely different conversation. But if you're working in those environments,
leave that group.
leave that group, or have a very serious heart to heart. You know, we're very grateful that we don't have to be in that environment with the four of us, and that we have a space that is a safe space to know that every critique, if you will, is working towards the goal of completing this story that we're trying to tell. You know? Yeah.
And speaking of completing that little circle, Ian, then you now get a song that Lolo might have crafted on piano or guitar or a combo of both, and then you hear that song, and then what is your end of it? Where do you jump in?
You know, it's all the other instruments. So if Lo gives me, you know, the vocals and let's say piano, or vocals and a guitar, it's coming up with everything else. And you know, what's beautiful about this partnership, this collaboration, is we're all open to hearing everything, right? So what I'll get pretty much what Lo has, and I don't know what's in Lo's head as far as her orchestration in what she has, you know, what she wrote it, because as musicians, we kind of hear the big thing unless it's just a ballad with a guitar. Like we hear the other instruments and how they should, you know, flow and what the beat should be. So it's interesting to be able to kind of take what Lo gives to me and be like, all right, I hear this kind of beat. Let me work on this beat first. And then, you know, how are we going to build it? And what are some of the instruments I want to add to it? Like, for example, I'm not a violinist at all, or a celloist, but there's a lot of violin and a lot of cello in these songs, but yet they're incredibly modern. So, you know, you can either interpret it as it's, you know, taking it and really making it authentic, or you can even take it to the point where it's like, that's modern pop rock synth, right? So there's two different ways you can look at it. So what I'll do is I'll just basically get it, and whatever comes to you know, whatever comes to me, I start working on it and start adding some, if there's some bass lines that I have in my head or some beats, and usually it's the beats and the bass. And then once you have that foundation, it's the rest of it, which is just color. It's like an artist, right? You can have a beautiful sketch, and then all of a sudden it's like, let me add a little bit of color here. Let me add a little bit of color. And that's all I'm doing, is trying to add a little bit of my interpretation of what the color should be, of what the presentation of the music has that Lo has given to us. And so far, I think that it's working out pretty well. I'm excited. What I was really excited about with going into outside of Chicago at Timberlake was to get a hold of a couple musicians and having them play some of the stuff that we had put together, so that she and I can be in the room together and be like, all right, let's try a couple of more things while we're in the room. And I think that was going to be some of the beauty about having a week together and really workshop it as writers, and just trying to see what works in a live environment, as well as, just hearing it out loud, because what's recorded and how people are going to play it are also a little bit different. So I'm excited to, take that next step with Lo and Alex and you, to be able to be like, all right, here's what we've put together so far. Let's hear it live. Let's hear it, with actors actually singing the words. And, that's the other thing is Lo, she's got probably one of the best voices that I've ever heard in my entire life, but she's also singing male parts in the demos. So trying to figure out how that would sound with a male singing it as opposed to Lo singing it, what key needs to change, what is that going to do to the orchestration behind it, to really determine, okay, does that work with a male? Because it works really well with a female vocal. So these are all the things that we're going to have to work through as we move forward with the piece.
So much going on. You guys, I can't thank you enough for being able to come on TLP Live tonight and just sharing a little bit about the process. And for our audiences at home, that's the thing about where you guys also come in, because at the end of our week, we would invite you guys to come and listen to what they've been working on for the week and to be able to give feedback. Dan, is there any last thing that I missed that we might? I know we have to wrap.
No, this was a very interesting. What am I doing? This was a very. I got to learn this program. No, this was a very interesting discussion tonight. Very, I'll be looking forward to it next summer. But I wish we could have seen some of this summer.
Us too.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all very so much. Ian, Alex, Lolo, you guys are fantastic. And Finding Helena. Ian, I know that you put up some quick, Facebook page that you could check out. Is that correct?
Yep. So if you go to Facebook and just type in Finding Helena Rock Musical, that's our page. And if you want to just go to the website directly, it's findinghelena.com. And we've got the links to the Facebook page there. So it's kind of this omni-channel marketing approach that I'm taking to. I'm not going to get into that.
Great. Oh, well, thank you all, you guys, so much. And, we will definitely look forward to bringing you on campus next summer. And I'm sure that I am, and I'm sure that a lot of our audiences are going to be very excited to have our very first inaugural New Works program be Finding Helena. And hopefully we'll be able to share with the audiences exactly what's going to be going on. And I can't wait. So thank you guys so very much. Lolo, Alexandra, Ian, you guys are fantastic. And thank you for coming on tonight and sharing with our audiences a little bit about your processes.
Thank you all. Thank you very much
for having us, Dan, Paul. Appreciate it.
Take care. Can you hear me, Paul? Oh, wait, sorry, I clicked the wrong button. I'm having lots of technical problems. Now my camera quit working.
Now you can't quit working. Well, you know what? Hey, at the end of the day, I think what's important is that this is live and we're doing it together. We're all in this together. And thank you all so much for joining us tonight at TLP Live. Dan, thank you so much. And I hope we will do this again next weekend.
Very good. And next week we have,
drum roll, please,
Sandra Santiago from, she was out here for Gypsy, and she was here in the 1982 season. and also the director of Gypsy and our artistic director for 8 years prior to Paul. Jim Baudry will be on next weekend, and we're also hoping to have a couple of our other actors from Gypsy on that night too. We'll see if we can roust a few more up.
I love it. I can't wait. Well, thank you so much. There you are.
All right. All right. Well, let's try this now, and we'll close tonight with. Yeah, can you believe this thing is not going to work?
Well, I'm not going to go 10 seconds without speaking.
So wait, here we go.
Are we going?
Yeah.
All right. We can't hear anything, just so you know. I don't know if you can hear the volume.
First class was amazing. I had such a great time. It was very informative and very helpful. I was engaged through the whole thing.
Working with the people in the class and Darlene and the awesome instructors that helped me through it just gave me like a comfortable feeling where I felt belonged. And I honestly learned so much just from the first lesson that I can't wait for this week.
I really enjoyed the class. I thought the format worked very well. Darlene was an awesome instructor. She's very funny and engaging.
Well, a little bit from our kids who have taken some of the classes. So don't forget, we've got the deal this week. Special price. It's basically 4 classes for the price of 3. So jump on that if you're interested. Paul, we've gone over again tonight. Look at us. Let's get out of here.
Let's get out. Have a good one, everybody.
See you tomorrow. Take care, everyone. Bye now.